early August 2024, height of summer. Is this the busiest time of the year for you?
It's definitely busy. Obviously, we haven't made it through a full season yet to know if it's the busiest. It definitely has more like upkeep work, if that makes sense. So market's a little slower and we're doing a lot more picking like we've talked about in past weeks. So like bed flips are obviously not as often as we have longer season stuff and all of our tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and such, and then all the fruit stuff. And so but it's like way more on like the cultivation side, keeping pathways mowed and keeping beds weeded and so on and so forth. Trying to keep water on, make sure we're staying on top of irrigation. So I don't know if I'd say it's like the busiest time of year, but it definitely feels like it's more of the upkeep work as opposed to the direct. It's easy when it's, oh yeah, I'm putting stuff in the ground or I'm harvesting something out of the ground to do that. It's those things are a pretty easy thing to just see the value in. But when it's, oh yeah, I've got to mow these pathways again for the umpteenth time, it's definitely not as exciting to do
Yeah.
the upkeep work of the summer.
Yeah, upkeep maintenance versus like just one-off tasks, doing this, doing that
Yeah.
type thing.
Just
You know, at
mowing
this,
so much grass. Oh my God. So much grass.
because when you said living pathways, what did you end up doing there?
I essentially just didn't hoe the pathways and just let things grow up that grew up. We limited on stuff like I don't have a wheel hoe. And just the idea of, like, stirrup hoeing pathways felt like the job that would just never end. So I exchanged that for the equally never-ending job of mowing the pathways. And yeah, so it started out when we first did everything, it was just your kinda leggy little winter perennial type weeds, and then now it's, like, full-blown, it's essentially lawn in between each bed. And yeah, I'm just mowing grass with the push mower, just fitting it right between the rows.
How's that worked from a practicality standpoint? Are you seeing it encroach into the beds and creep in? Is it easy to mow? Is it easy? Are the plants affected on either side?
It's easy to mow. I've been looking, like checking Facebook Marketplace feverishly, trying to find like an 18-inch mower. Because obviously I set everything up on 18-inch pathways, just following the standard model and realized I don't have an 18-inch mower. And so your standard 22-inch push mower. But for the most part, nothing's getting transplanted or sown all the way to the very edge of the bed. You're coming in a few inches and then it grows up and out into the pathway or it kind of and fills out the bed that way. So for the most part, having wheels going along the inside of the bed isn't the end of the world. For some of the tender, higher density stuff like our like Mizuna, Tatsoi, stuff like that, it can be a little difficult. But for the most part, it's usually like a pretty well established thing on the next bed over, so I can push it a little closer to that side. But yeah, with the crabgrass and everything, it really does like to creep. And so also thinking about getting a like an edger or doing like kicking the weed eater sideways to just take the grass down, kind of it just like perpendicular to the bed and just take it down. Because as of right now, I'm essentially just going through and just doing a quick mow, like a quick pass with the mower, and then just stirrup hoeing the edges of the beds just to keep that grass going. But it definitely wants to creep in. And I'll have beds where I look at them and I'm like, oh my God, they're just full of weeds and it's just completely taken over. And once I really get in there and inspect it, I realize it's actually just the grass on the edges that have grown up toward the middle of the bed, and really the bed's almost completely weed free. And so if I can stay on top of that, then it's manageable. But just like with anything, it's just finding the method and the timing. I've heard some people like Jesse Frost always talks about like he was really on top of trying to keep his pathways mowed and they realized like it was better if you let them grow up a little bit. It was just he like the wild look. I tried that and it's an absolute disaster. Like I really am gonna have to keep the pathways like nice and low and tight just to keep them from creeping too much and keeping everything manageable. Just with especially we've had 3 weeks where it essentially rained every day. So you're dealing with this like super dense, fast growing wet grass. And it was a bit of a nightmare for sure.
I guess it's only an 18-inch pathway, but you think about it, it's so many beds, it's that many strips you have to mow. It's a decent amount of mowing to do, plus the perimeter and all that. It's not a throwaway job, it's a commitment.
Yeah, and it should probably be like I don't know, every Tuesday we do a third of it or whatever, but it just gets done as it gets done. We did some transplanting and some direct seeding yesterday, and so it was like, all right, let's go ahead and mow really low and tight now so that we're not trying to fight through the weeds as we're getting everything transplanted. But yeah, if we can get our ducks in a row and get that on a bit of a schedule, it should be relatively easy to stay on top of. Because yeah, other than that, it's just one pass. You just walk it right up the middle. Boom, you can walk 100 feet pathway with a self-propelled push mower in a minute, maybe 30 seconds. It's pretty quick.
At this point in the season, how would you grade your production performance? So if when you look at cultivation, production, flipping beds, crop planting, what grade would you give yourself?
I'd say if A is like absolutely perfect, nailing it every time, and F is like every bed's a crop failure, I guess like a C plus, we'll say. It's been some stuff's worked out excellently. Some stuff's been I've definitely had some stuff that like failed or I planted out a whole bed of something and I only ended up getting half a dozen bunches of that just because the weeds took over or there was some sort of like soil-borne issue. But for the most part, it's been passable. It's been enough for us to continue to like harvest every week and take stuff to market and kind of keep kicking the can down the road.
So would you say you're where you might have thought you'd be at the beginning of the year in terms of like grade level? Or do you think, or did you go into it thinking, I got this unlocked. I'll crush this. It's no problem. Or was it like, I have no clue what I'm doing. I'll be lucky if I can get through it. So you're actually overachieving expectations. Where do you think you are?
I think as far as like the ease of production and just things like going in and being harvested and coming out and all that, definitely I like had a little bit of hubris in thinking what I'd be able to accomplish. Now, in spite of that, like the quality of what's getting harvested has stayed pretty that's probably actually exceeded my expectation. So it's this weird double standard in a way where like production's been way messier and challenging than I thought, but the quality of what we're pulling out has been, at least from the feedback of what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, it's been pretty good. So in a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's there. Not too bad. The other thing I was thinking at this point, it's not a full season, but you've been through enough of the season to get a feel for, hey, this is what farming's like.
But
You've
yeah,
done the startup, you've been through the summer, been through the spring, a bunch of markets under your belt at this point. What's the best part at this point about having your own farm? If you looked at everything involved, is there one thing or a few things that you can say, regardless of whether they're good or not? I absolutely love these things about farming or about the farm or about how my life works with the farm. What are the total highlights from this experience?
I really love our farmers market. If you take out the having to get up super early and every Saturday and more of the in spite of all that, I love getting to interact with our customers, getting to hear things. People say, I never ate salad, but I we buy your salad mix because it's the only salad mix my husband will eat. Like things like that, or like kind of that customer interaction or getting like a compliment about the Mizuna tatsoi from a chef today when I dropped off an order. Like that sort of stuff makes it all worth it in a lot of ways. I guess I'm just big on just feeling validated, like words of affirmation and that sort of aspect. And but I just love the people aspect of being at market and dropping stuff off with chefs and things like that. It's more the extroverted side that sets me apart from I feel like a lot of people that are like, I wanted to be a farmer so I didn't have to talk to people. I really enjoy that. And then also I as frustrating as it can be, I really love like the problem solving. Like nothing happens exactly the way it should. It's either this didn't get into the ground in the right time or whatever. Every day is a new problem solving challenge. And my brain just thrives off of like putting out fires and solving complex problems. As stressful as I can be, it's just I'm in my element where I can just turn everything off and just go. And then of course I love being outside, like being able to be barefoot in the living pathways, like not walking on like hard, craggy ground, but just in like nice soft grass, get on my knees, weed a bed, transplant lettuce, whatever it is. Like it's I mean, there's downsides to every part of it in a lot of ways, but for the most part, yeah, like being able to work with those people, being outside, solving problems, and then I guess big picture, there's the noble thought of I'm doing the most important job in the world. Like when the stock market was tanking the other day, I jokingly said to the guys, the other farm, you can't eat stocks. So no matter what happens, like we're growing food that people are going to eat and to keep them alive. And there's so many benefits. Like I could go down the list and most things have a really good positive spin to it, except for maybe like finances. But even then I could just be like, we're totally independent. We're self-sufficient. We're doing it on our own. We're not dependent on some company that could go under tomorrow. We're just dependent on our own company that could go under tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I've always felt about investing coming out of that world. People will be like, I'm surprised you don't invest more. You did a lot of that. And I used to love doing it. But now it's, you can invest in whoever, Tesla. And then Elon Musk does something stupid or a plane hits the Tesla factory or whatever. They missed some made up metric number, right? And the
Yeah.
stock goes down. And I can't control any of that. At least if I bet on me, I'm like, I can control a good part of that, not the macro part, but you're right. It brings it into your own hands. And it's always good to have that security. Or I think there is something in the entrepreneurial mindset of living on that edge of, right, like I can lose it all, but I can also win it all too. I think we all have a little bit of gambler mentality in us. Thinking too of the farming journey, what are the things that you'd be happy if you never had to do them again on the farm?
Oh man. Mowing grass, definitely. I just really, I've always hated mowing grass. Takes me way back to, yeah, like our first couple episodes talk about doing like the foodscaping, landscaping company. If I never had to do that again, that would be great. Trying to think what else. That's like weeding beds. Like I really hate like weeding, cultivating beds. I don't mind like crawling a bed and just pulling big weeds, but just the like when they're really small and you've got the collinear hoe out there and you're just like working around, like that super minute detail work drives me up a wall. It's can we get this over with, please? That and picking figs. If I never had to pick figs again, I would be I'd be grateful. I was complaining to my wife today as we were picking this morning. I was just like, I hate this. I really don't want to do this ever again. I hate that this is such a good selling crop and we don't really have to do anything to it because it's not my favorite, but thankfully, it's only for a month or so, and then we can move on to something else.
What's the bad part about picking figs?
For me, it's I think, like, I picked figs for several years over at the other farm, and they're itchy, at least for me. Like, some people, it bothers them less than others, but for me, like, just getting, like, the leaves rubbing against my skin if I'm in, like, short sleeve shirt because it's summertime, it just literally, I'll like, break out into a rash, so I have to wear, like, long sleeves and gloves, and so you're hot and you're sweaty, and then I added, like, the element of at least with the varieties that I have, like, they do not taste good unless they're ripe, but the problem is once they're ripe, everything wants to eat them, whether it's, like, Japanese beetles or wasps or bees or deer or birds, everything wants to eat them as soon as they're ripe, and that's the only time when they taste good, and so it almost seems like you have a 2-hour window sometimes, and "Oh, it's not quite ready yet," and you go out the next day and you're like, "Oh my god," and it's already done, and so as a business owner, and I'm thinking like, "All right, I'm doing this, and this is an investment, I'm picking these, and I'm gonna make a return," and then you're like, it feels like every other one that I pick is gone bad, and I won't be able to sell it, and I'm just doing all this kind of useless work, and then you have to pick through them again before you sell them because they've gotten even softer in the cooler, and I love them, but I hate them.
Yeah, yeah, one of those like blessing curses, right? Because looking at some of the numbers you sent me, they're you're one of your big sellers right now, right? $100 a week at the market of figs.
Oh, yeah, like, selling
That's
more of those than anything. It's what's getting me through the summer,
and the only thing you have to do is pick them. That's the other great thing, right? Like
pretty
there's
much.
other
Yeah, and then
there's
some
other
pruning in the
blessings.
wintertime, but other than that, yeah, it's just pick them.
When you think about the farm you're at now, a couple questions I have. I've talked to people who've done the solo farm. Do you think you can farm what you have now by yourself without expanding? Or could you even expand and still do it by yourself? Because if you look ahead, it's like, where do you go? I know you have a lot of beds you can put into production, expansion out. Does that mean you got to hire staff if you do that? The other side of the coin is, well, stay on the smaller footprint that you're on, maybe do it yourself, and then inherently you just get better. So your production is going to go up year two just because you're more organized, you're more knowledgeable, you know what's going on, the soil's a little better, all that type of stuff. Where's your mind go these days with what does next year look like in terms of labor? What does next year look like in terms of farm size, given what you're going through now?
Yeah, I think it's definitely doable. If I take so out of the like 3 blocks that we wanted to get done, I'm like, I've got 1.5 of them done. So we've expanded a little bit since kind of spring, adding like a bed at a time. And so I think if I was full time, if I'm there every day or like putting in a good 40-hour a week time on the farm, I think it's doable, especially as we dial things in more. It just becomes a matter of at 40 hours a week, I just don't have enough experience and time on it to know, can we pull out a full-time income's worth of stuff? Because it's, yeah, I can double my time, and doubling my time, double my income. I don't really know. And so a lot of those questions will remain unanswered, but I definitely think it's doable. I'm even thinking now about scaling back to 2 days a week at the other farm just so I can have, as restaurant sales have come online now, I'm like, oh, like now Tuesdays have become another harvest and delivery day. And so now basically my 2 days at the farm that I'm solely dedicated have now become harvest delivery days. And so now all of the other stuff is getting pushed to the mornings and evenings. And so trying to do that. But I think it's definitely doable as we dial things in. I think we can do a lot more with just like my labor and occasionally my wife helping. But I do think harvesting is a lot of work, especially when you're a market farm. And so much of what you have to harvest is we have to get it and it needs to be as fresh as possible for Saturday. It I'm trying to envision being a full-time farmer who's primarily selling to a market and think about how much I would have to harvest on a Friday to get ready for that Saturday. And it's already a lot. Just my minuscule part-time-ish amount that I'm bringing in. Like, if anything, I would just need to get back to having some help for harvest days, and then maybe I could manage everything else on my own, you know? But with that too, there's so much of a mental load of like, all right, when do we flip this bed? When do we get this in the ground? Checking planting scope. Like, there's so much outside of just like the physical work that I think being able to have a like an employee or employees to be able to just like delegate tasks to give me the time to do the more high value task, whether it's like making sure like things in the seed house are going well, or just make sure that like chefs are taken care of, or yeah, running deliveries. Like today's a great example. I had to drive all the way into Atlanta to drop off an order for a chef and then hit another spot on the way back. And it's if I had an employee, I could have given them like a task list of things to do that they could have knocked out that don't really require a lot of oversight. When I'm off the farm, like the farm work screeches to a halt. Even though I am like generating income because I'm making sales, it's being able to have kind of this like continuous workflow, whether I'm there or not, in some form or fashion would definitely benefit. We're in that awkward, uncomfortable stage of do we expand? Do we take the plunge and try to go full time this year? If at this point it would be like fall or winter when we make that decision, is that a wise decision? Or do we just try to just go through the mud of part time and scrape together as much possible sales as we can and then make the decision to do it in the spring? And I don't really have a solid answer on that yet.
You think the farm size you're operating at now is enough? Or do you think, regardless of hours, regardless of employees, is what you're producing from now enough, or do you have to go bigger?
I think I need to go bigger to keep everything like good and healthy. Like I don't have any room or time to really get beds into cover crop right now. And I'm riding off of like initial fertilization. Hopefully the no-till practices are helping, and then like a light fertilization in between a bed flip and then like foliar feeding. But I would love to be able to, yeah, like every bed to get cover cropped once a year or even every couple of years. But like right now, like once we're really humming, there's not going to be really any time to get things into kind of a cover crop rotation to give the soil a break and to really feed it in a intentional way. So I would love to expand just to give myself some wiggle room in that sense where it's like, all right, we expanded and we could do 4 beds of winter squash in that plot, but it's, you know what, let's just do it in another cover crop and give it another rotation. And then once we get to it in the fall, it'll be way better.
How many hours a week are you now on your farm?
Oh man.
Don't count
Um,
market day.
yeah, yeah. Don't count market day. 8, 16. We're still hanging out somewhere in the 20, 24 hour range.
Right.
It's hard because it's squeezing an hour in the morning before I go to the
Yeah.
other farm and work till dark when you can. And so it changes from week to week. But yeah, I would say somewhere in that like 20 to 25 hour range every week.
So let's go run through a hypothetical. Let's say you're 20. If you went to 40, and we'll keep market hours out of this. If you went to 40, you gave yourself 20 hours a week on farm for production, all that stuff. What would that enable you to do that you can't do now? Or maybe another way of thinking about it, how would you use those additional hours?
I would definitely be able to be on top of like bed flips way more. I think that's our biggest hamstring at the moment is just beds that are out of production. It's like, all right, that bed of arugula is done. And do we want to go through and cut it all out and compost it, or do we want to tarp it? And we don't really have an extra tarp right now. And so oftentimes the beds end up just sitting and then they get weeds in them or whatever. And I would definitely be able to be on top of those bed flips and keeping beds in production, or at least like covering them so that they're not becoming more of a problem. That would be like the number one thing that I would use the majority of my time, or that would be like the highest priority thing. And then probably more seed starting. Inevitably, it's trying to do 4-ish trays of lettuce a week, similar on beets. And then as we're coming into fall, same thing with pak choi, things like that. But inevitably, it seems like with all of the things that are going on, oh crap, I forgot to do that this week. Let's throw in a headlamp and just do it in the dark, because if I don't get it done now, it's going to get pushed off for another few days, and then we're behind even more. And yeah, I would say just trying to get more production, because cultivating beds and things aren't really adding more production, therefore more harvest. And so right now, if we could generate more production, then we could increase our sales, which would then create more space for either investing back into the farm more, whether it's like tools or seeds or season extension, whatever it may be. And so I would say just trying to focus in on production, because even if it looks gnarly and it's full of weeds, but I can still pull a good harvest out of it, then it's more, like I said, we've kicked the can down the road another day and we can just keep going.
Yeah, that's the math in this exercise, right? I trade 20 hours of lost income from another job for 20 hours on my farm. So I have to make that back, which means you have to do a few things, right? Like you have to use that 20 hours to grow enough stuff to offset your 20 hours, assuming you can sell it all. And that's where that whole being on top of bed flips, being on top of crop planting, like get more of a
Mhm.
handle. Do you feel like now are you more reactionary to things like, oh, this bed's out, I got to flip it versus, all right, I know that bed's going to be done next week. I got to prepare for it now, where you can be more systematized. Like I know when I get frantic of just like when I lose control of my schedule and planning, I become just, I got to do this, then I got to do this. And I'm just,
Yeah, just putting out fires.
that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Putting it out and there's no thought to what happens beyond getting this fire out, except the next fire. It's not like I'm looking ahead. Do you feel you're in that mode?
I feel like I'd say I was, and I'm in the transition between that and getting my shit together and having a plan, and being more proactive. Like thinking, yeah, like I harvested out a bed of hacker rice today. And it's like, all right, the bed's done today. The back half of that bed is also done. So let's get everything out and get it ready, because fall brassicas need to go in like next week. And so I'm at least thinking ahead more and thinking more proactively, as opposed to like, all right, this is out. Now let's focus on the next thing that needs to be done. But this summer was definitely just like, it was nothing but just putting out fires. And it was like, oh crap. We were so focused on trying to stay on top of grass or trying to stay on top of this or that or whatever, that we completely forgot to sow any more lettuce. And then so yeah, we went a month where we didn't have anything because it just slipped my mind, because I was just putting out fires and not kind of working the plan, because I didn't have a plan. And yeah, if you go into seed time It's everything's pretty much planned out for the next at least the next 2 months of what's getting sown for the most part, and so it's I've like, I can't do anything about the summer, I can't do anything about the spring, but I can at least try to make the fall far more organized and far more efficient. So that's the hope, is that this fall will be much more proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah. So if you could use those extra hours to get the planning, become proactive, grow crops, then it comes down to, again, can you sell them? We'll talk about that in an upcoming episode, like how market's going and all that type of stuff. What makes me think, like I've had these like crazy ideas, right? Of people who want to lose weight, they hire a trainer or they hire a nutritionist or like a chef. Like you're really like you're in the NBA, right? You have a chef. You just make my meals. I just show up and I eat. I go to the gym and you just tell me what to do. All that financial advisors. Hey, here's my risk tolerance. Tell me how to invest. There's got to be a niche in market farming for the crop planner, like
Yeah,
somebody who's a third party and all they do is crop plan for some amount of clients. And they are responsible for keeping, like, you accountable. So,
yeah.
like, you say, "Here's what I wanna grow. Here's my market. Here's my hypothetical crop plan," and then they know enough about it, they massage it around like, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's tighten it up." You feed them data, but they stay on you. They ride you like your mom, nag you like your mom, and be like, you know, "Hey, I need this data. Come on." And they're bugging you if you're
Mhm.
not accountable, so you can't just shirk it off and not do it. And they're like, "All right, bed 15, gotta get arugula in today." And you're like, "Man, Mary, I'm tired." And I mean, nothing, like, put it in today or you're gonna have hell to pay. And they just do it from afar. And it's a way like, is there a outsourcing of that knowledge set? And I'm a little bit joking, but I'm also a little bit
No,
serious of
it's yeah, that sounds like a good they need serious, like, bookkeeper energy, and it's there's no more valuable person that you could, like, offload and delegate work to, but is also, like, probably one of the most hated people because you're like, "Oh my god, yeah, like, Mary, get off my back. Like, I'm trying to do the freaking business, and you're asking me where these receipts are, or what was this transaction?" And it's yeah, if you had somebody that was like that, but for yeah, crop planning, especially for, like, new and upstarting farms, like, that could be man, like, that would have solved 80% of my problems this year.
they hold your hand, they provide guidance, they work
Yeah,
on your plan with you, they hold you accountable. They do all the things that a nutritionist would do,
yeah.
a trainer would do. You're in whatever rehab for something. Somebody works with you on all these things, and this is all. Hey, somebody out there listening to this, you've been on a farm. Here's a new.
Yeah, Mary, we've been talking about you. This is the universe saying it's time to get your act together.
Yeah,
Quit your bookkeeping job and start the new business.
start this. They could have a bit. They could have a bookkeeping side add-on service, right? That's
Oh,
something that
man.
farmers don't wanna do. It's, "Hey, you keep track of that." All these things have a little bit of a mean streak in them, just so they can crack the whip when needed, and you're a little bit scared of them, like, "I like her, but I'm a little bit scared. I cannot risk that phone call today going in and telling her block 4 didn't get planted out because I do not wanna hear 15 minutes of it up in my ear."
Yeah, it's a good
Well,
business idea.
because I think, yeah, that seems to be I think I was talking to another farmer earlier today, more related to microgreens and crop planning is one of the struggles. It's hard for people to linearly think ahead into the future about what they're going to need. Or I should say, it's hard to do it when in the heat of the moment. It's easy to do it if I'm just sitting here cold, then I don't have to. I can make a crop plan today, right? But I don't have to
Yeah.
actually execute it. But when you're in the middle of executing it,
Mhm.
troubleshooting other stuff that's going wrong, putting out fires, taking on new sales, building customers, then it's like that plan, it's not, I don't know. Like you're going to always drive on the right side of the road, right? No matter how good of a day you're having. Where the crop plan is, yeah, uh, I might want to go into the shoulder. I might want to go into the left lane today. Like it's a flexible yellow line down the center. We're gonna pretend that's not there. That's how it feels like crop planning can be.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, especially in the, like you said, the heat of the moment when you're in the middle of doing it and when you're not insulated from everything else and like the 15,000 other things that need to get done. Yeah, it can be tough to, yeah, because it can just be easy to be like, ah, it'll get done when it gets done. those seeds aren't going anywhere. Those trays aren't going anywhere. We'll get them started eventually, and as opposed to the weeds aren't gonna stop growing. The figs aren't gonna stop ripening up on the tree. The grass isn't gonna stop growing. It's the one thing that will basically sit there and do nothing until you're ready to do something with it. And unfortunately, it at least in my context, it's the one thing that often gets missed because it's not nagging for my attention. And until it's like, "Oh, crap. We didn't get that in the ground, and now we're not gonna have Mizuna greens for the chef this week." And I have to have that awkward conversation. And then that's like a good motivator to be like, "Oh, no." And then even though it's not like nagging at me because I see it every single day, like it has to get done. Yeah, it's seed crop planting and everything. If there's one thing that I would say would be the non-experienced pay for a course or pay for a workshop or consultation from another farmer or whatever, I would say that's probably it. Like everything else, I feel like you can learn it from experience, do some volunteering on a farm or work on a farm or this and that, whatever. But if there's one thing where it's like, man, it's worth it to pay for this course, it's find someone who can teach you how to crop plan for kind of your growing area, for your market within reason. I could go back and do it again. And I wasn't, or even now, if I wasn't so crazy slammed and I had a little bit of extra cash and a little bit of extra time, and you told me, like, here's this course for how to crop plan for like kind of small scale market garden in the Southeast US, I would be all over it.
Yeah, I wonder if you even need the handhold too in there, because then I like your point about it's the one thing that isn't. It's not organic. It's not growing on its own, right? Leaks
No.
continue to leak. Plants continue to grow. If you don't deal with them, you visually see it, and hey, there's a big consequence for not doing it. Where the crop plan, I think you can, or things like accounting or marketing or whatever. It's not just crop planning. It's that stuff can, you can always say that can hold a day. And a
Yeah.
day turns into 2 days or 3 days. And like before you know it, I haven't looked in QuickBooks in 6 weeks. And
That was me last week.
yeah,
Yep.
that type of thing. So yeah, I think it's like, hey, get me in and then walk me through. And every week we're gonna have accountability sessions, or like I can ask questions, or somebody's gonna make sure I'm actually doing the thing. I think that would be invaluable for a lot of people. Because at this stage, do you have the time to sit back and work on the business and think? So 2 examples might be it, and maybe you're somewhere in one of these or somewhere not in one. Fall's coming. All right, I'm gonna plant fall crops, some collard greens, kale, more root veg. I'll put some broccoli. I'll bring the broccolini in, and you're just like, "Oh, here's fall crops I can plant." Versus, okay, I sit back, like, what do I think would be good at the market? What's out there maybe I'm not thinking of? What might grow good in my region? And there's more of a sit back and plan approach, but that obviously takes time. It takes mental energy. It takes a mental space. Like to do it after a 12-hour workday, forget it. Like you're already fried. Do you feel like you get a chance to sit back and think about how to improve the business, or work on that cliche of work on the business versus in the business? Or are you just so caught up in working in the business? And I don't say that as trying to point fingers or anything, because it can be hard in startup, I think.
No, I feel like I've done better with that these last couple weeks. Like, you just happen to catch me at a good time where, yeah, like, going through the seed catalogs, going through, like, scrolling through the websites and just going through and be like, "Oh, so we're thinking about doing mustard greens," instead of just being like, "Let's just do a standard one. Let's see what they have. What would give us a little bit of a better edge at the market, or what's something that maybe a chef would, or what's gonna be like a dual purpose mustard green, something that might do better for like baby leaf to throw into a mix versus what would be good for bunching." And so I feel like this fall, I've done much better where kind of spring going into summer, I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. I'm just going to do more or less rip off what Crystal Organic is doing with a few adjustments here and there, just roll with it and realize, oh no, like I'm not the same farm, not the same grower, not selling to the same places. I really need to think about what I'm doing, who I'm selling to, and how to differentiate myself. So I feel like I did a lot better with that in preparation for the fall. But at the end of the day, a lot of that like on the business, like deep work, at least the mental side of it, unfortunately tends to happen like putting the kids to bed, in the morning making coffee, laying in bed at night, like it's time to go to sleep. But I drank that extra cup of coffee so I could like work until dark. And now I'm regretting it, but I'm going to lay in bed and think about the farm. And I've really been surprised at like how difficult it's been to turn it off. Literally, it's like from the moment, even before my eyes open, when you like you're starting to wake up till that kind of twilight as you're falling asleep and dreaming often many nights a week. It's, man, I really can't turn it off. And so a lot of that like thought work tends to just happen in the truck, in the bathroom, laying in bed, making dinner whenever and whenever. And it's a bit of a mix, I'd say.
Yeah, and we'll touch on numbers again probably next episode. But when you think about the farming journey now, do you feel optimistic about it? Like where things are headed? Are you pessimistic, nervous, or somewhere on the fence in between? As you sit here today, this is August 6th.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic. Unfortunately, I feel like that's a fatal flaw in a way of I'm just perpetually optimistic. Like it can always get better. With the grass is always going to be greener. Not comparing to somebody else's, like grass is always greener on the other side, but we just need to keep working and it's just going to get better. It's always going to get better. And so, in a lot of ways, yeah, I will just perpetually be optimistic. There's definitely been some thoughts on harder days, and it's man, what would this have looked like if I would have just kept working at a farm or just got a different job and just became a gardener instead of a farmer. But at the end of the day, I try to not like second guess my decisions or dwell too much on the what ifs or the shoulda, coulda, woulda. And it's more just we have a lease, we have a house, we're here. This is the life that we have chosen. And it's like we made our bed, now we have to lay in it. And so there's no point in fantasizing about what could have been. And it's just, let's just stay positive and keep trucking along. So, like, for better or for worse, we're just remaining optimistic. I think from a genuine place, not just put on a happy face and just keep trugging along until we finally just completely crash and burn. I feel good. Every getting a compliment from like I said, getting a compliment from a chef today about, oh, the Mizuno and the Tatsoi were so excellent. And this isn't just like some dive bar. This is like high end French chef from Bordeaux who left the Four Seasons and now is at this restaurant. And when they're complimenting your stuff, it's okay. So we're doing something right. And that gives you just that little bit of oomph to just say, like, all right, we're doing something right. Let's just keep going and let's just refine and it'll get better. And then eventually, one day, hopefully, we'll get to a point where we can have regular work hours and have a steady, modest income. And maybe it doesn't have to be the grind and the struggle and the fear like every single week. And just those little bits of encouragement, whether people realize they're giving it or not, or just the moment when the crop grows and it looks perfect or whatever it may be, like those have really helped keep us positive and keep us moving forward.
Is the path to success here, is it produce more consistently, which enables you to sell more at the market, expand into restaurants, which means you can then up sales and brings you onto the farm for more hours full time. Is that really the path? Is like maybe the domino of we just need consistent production and more of it? Or is there something else in between there?
I think all of those different steps that you mentioned are the path forward. I think what I'm trying to figure out now is in what order do I order those steps?
Right.
Is it more production creates more sales, which creates more time, which that would be the ideal one. Well, I guess ideally it would be more sales allows for more time for more production. That would probably be the most ideal. But or is it like is it the scary one, which is like more time leads to more production, which leads to more sales? But I think regardless of which way you order that, it's about yeah, it's just about refining. It's about maybe a little bit of expanding. Let's just build out a little bit more. But at the end of the day, it's this fall is going to be about like, all right, we have to get dialed in. Like we have to get on top of planting and bed flipping and harvesting. And we just got to refine and become more efficient and try and give ourselves as much room to work as possible, like in our time. And because at the end of the day, unless someone's going to cut me a check, I can't really do a whole lot about the money, and I can't just snap my finger and make more money unless we generate more sales. And the only way we can really generate more sales with the same amount of time and the same amount of space is just to continue to refine and to dial in.
If you, without getting too deep into market talk, are you limited at the market by the amount of product you can bring, or are you limited by the market? Like you're bringing enough product, but you can't move it all.
I think it's a mix, but I think
Both.
if you, yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I don't think it's a, yeah, it's definitely a bit of both, but I would say, if I was being honest, it's probably 70-30. Like it's 70% market traffic, 30% what I'm bringing. There's like this week, I was able to bring a lot more of particular items and even some new items. I was like, oh, finally, they're coming online and thinking like, oh, this is going to be it. Like we're potentially going to be able to get back to our spring high numbers, like hitting the six, maybe 700s if we sold out. And it was just like, no, people just didn't seem to be interested, and or it was just slow. And so I think some of it is definitely what I brought. If I would have had more salad mix, then I'd obviously probably could have sold way more because I sold out of it so quickly. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think the reality of it is it's just, the market is slower, at least this summer. It's been a lot slower than I thought it would be. But I'm hoping that with the fall, the combination of adding restaurant sales, more production because we're just dialing in our process, mixed with hopefully the fall markets will be busier. I think that hopefully that'll be a winning combination for us.
Thinking broad, at least the more product you have, it opens up options of how you want to move it. So even if it doesn't go all through the market, you can then at least go to chefs or wherever else is an option. But without that product, without a diversity of product, is that a factor, do you think, for restaurants? Is it consistency? Is it volume of product? Is it lack of offerings?
I don't think I've really fully understand what you're asking.
So say you want to sell to restaurants,
Yeah.
you obviously need consistency. So they
Hmm.
don't want to buy from you. Some will say, "Hey, I'll take whatever you got."
Yeah.
That's, I think, not the norm. Most of them, yeah, I want to buy some sort of product every week, salad mix, this much every week. So you need consistency. You need a volume of product because you don't, they want to buy a certain amount, right? They might want to buy 2 pounds of salad mix
Yeah.
or 10 bunches of radishes. So you need volume, and then you need breadth of product. And I've heard growers say this, like they might not want to deal with you if you're just selling them salad mix because it's,
Yeah.
hey, that's another account now we got to keep track of for one thing of salad mix. But if you can sell us salad mix and carrots and root veg and kale, it's okay. Now we're taking on the work of another account to get a whole bunch of stuff. I've had microgreen growers say this. We can't just buy sunflower shoots from you. It's not enough. We need
Yeah.
other stuff to make this worth our while. So when you look at where you're at, if you want to get into restaurants, you have consistency. Can I produce the product week in and week out to satisfy the chefs? Can I produce enough of that product to actually service several restaurants? And then three, can I have enough breadth of product to make restaurants interested? Are When you look at those three, are they all factors that need to be improved? Or is there one over the other? What do you think?
I would definitely say, at least from the little bit of experience that I have now with the couple of restaurants that I'm working or will be working with, I think volume is probably number one. Yeah, because they don't want to buy 2 pounds of turnips or whatever. They want 10 pounds at least. And so I'd say volume is probably the number one. And then it's also the number one for me because I'm selling it less than retail. So I need to push more volume to really make it worth it.
Right.
Especially when you start including in a drive, like a 3 hour round trip drive to Atlanta and back. It better be freaking worth it. And then I would say from there, it's consistency. I think the diversity of what you offer, it may limit the amount of places you can sell to. So maybe because I'm really only like, I'm pretty greens and roots heavy right now as far as what I'm offering to restaurants, just because those are like the quick turnaround things that you can get a lot of them in the ground and get them out pretty quick. And they're usually a higher value product, so I can really justify selling them at a closer to wholesale price. I feel like it's limited the excitement that maybe some people like I've reached out to a couple of the restaurants I've worked with in the past, and they're just like, "Yeah, we really don't need that. We buy romaine hearts from Cisco, and that's all we really need for our salad. We're not really looking for like super fancy greens. But man, if you grew Jimmy Nardello peppers, we would be all over it. And I don't know how well those would do at the market. Maybe they would do okay. And so I'd say like the product offering is probably the least important, but consistency, especially if it's a restaurant that has some sort of a stable menu, then that's super important. And I think out of the three that I'll be working with, one tends to fall more consistent to where, and then another one is a little bit in the middle. And then I have another restaurant where literally like their menu changes twice a day, every day for lunch and for dinner. I guess once to now, because now they're just doing dinner. But with that, what all you bring can really change, but being able to deliver every single week, both from a bottom line standpoint for me, because then if I know it's like, all right, I'm going to Atlanta every single week, I can then start planning. It goes beyond just making the sale, but then it's like planning your whole week around it because it's like, all right, like I need to know how I'm going to plan my day because I'm making that drive. So I'd say the consistency and volume are probably the most important. Because I would say if you have 3 or 4 or 5 things and you hit up enough restaurants, eventually you're gonna find somebody that'll want some stuff. And then like even today, like I had peppers and cucumber that I didn't throw on the list because I thought I would sell out at the farmer's market and I didn't. And so I took them to the restaurant with me and I just was like, "Hey, I've got these. Do you want them? We don't want all of them, but we'll take some of them." And so it was like that wasn't consistent or high volume, but it was a diversity. And so it allowed me to get an extra $20 worth of sales. Yeah, but I'd say in hierarchy, it's definitely like volume, consistency, diversity.
Yeah. So all of the challenges of figuring this stuff out. One other thing is variety. As you're saying that, I started thinking, how do you feel about the crop variety this year? When you look at what you did at the beginning of the season through what you're planning on doing in the fall, that's X number of crops. I don't mean like different types of lettuce. We'll call lettuce one thing. Do
Yeah.
you do you feel comfortable with, hey, we're growing enough stuff? Do you feel like you need to grow other things? So I'm not saying you need to grow whatever fennel that you or rutabaga and stuff like that. Do you feel like you need to add on things into the future when you look ahead to next year? Or do you feel like, okay, kind of the number of crops we go, it works. It's just figuring out sales and that type of thing.
I think I need to add more for 2 reasons. One, I have such little experience that I need to try growing things I've never grown before because it might be an amazing crop. Like
Yeah.
the onion flower was that way. It was just a total fluke and realized it's like, "Oh, man, for my chefs next spring, that's gonna be amazing. I'm gonna be able to, like, consistently deliver an amazing product that I can charge a premium for, that they're gonna absolutely love and be able to really, like, present to their customers." And there's no way I would have known that unless I just tried. But it's yeah, I've never grown fennel, but I have fennel seed. I'm gonna try it this year. And so I think one, it's you never know what your secret weapons are until you grow it and then you try to sell it and then just see how people do. I'm trying to think of another example of what I have at the market right now that's just really been like a big showstopper.
Was
I
anything
mean,
even flat? You just like market does not care.
the Mizuna tatsoi, like the Asian greens, people just don't give a crap about them. But they're really easy to grow and the chefs love them. And so it's like, all right, so maybe it's not like a big standout at the farmer's market, but it's a good one for my chefs. And it might also be one of those things that it just takes time. If you would have asked me 3 months ago, I'd have been like, hacker red turnips, absolutely flat, totally not worth it. But then you start talking to people about it and you let them try it. The old adage like that, let them try it and they'll buy it. And now it's like one of my better sellers. It's definitely my best root veg seller by far, other than carrots. But feels like that's an unfair comparison. But I would say peppers have been relatively flat. I don't know if it's because I'm not growing just like green bell peppers that everybody knows. I'm doing like an Italian roasting pepper, even though they eat exactly the same. I tried doing that this week, just making little samples and people weren't like, "Oh my god, it's the greatest pepper I've ever had." And they just I don't know if they just didn't get it or they just didn't really care, but it's been flat. But yeah, number 1 is you don't really know what your secret weapons could be until you've tried them. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then 2, don't unless maybe you've been at a consistent market or you really know what the other farms in your area are growing, like, you don't know what's gonna be your standout. For me, it's been greens and root veg. I thought for sure that it would be like, everyone's gonna have greens and root veg. Like, I'm not gonna stand out at all. I'm just honestly gonna follow the advice of all the other people that have come before me, and those are the market garden staples. And I've realized, like, I'm the greens and root veg farm. Nobody else has any of that right now except for me. And there's no way I would have known that unless I was just stupid enough to continue to try to push those things through the summer. And then you get comments like, "We'll only eat your salad mix." Even when it's like summer salad mix, which is like bitter and not as good as like fall and winter, and they're like, "Oh, it's still the best." And yeah, so I'd say I definitely want to expand the like variety of what we're growing because yeah, maybe fennel will be like an all-star for us. And more than likely, no one else will have it. And if we can find those, like where those 2 things intersect, where it's no one else has it and everybody loves it, oh man, and then you're off to the races.
Boom,
And
yeah.
so I'm hoping with some of the newer things that we'll offer that are a little different, a little unique, that maybe it'll intersect those 2 things and it'll become a big moneymaker for us.
This is all part of that first year, right? Try stuff, learn stuff. Yeah, I think there's so much of this you would never know in advance. Maybe people take it for granted. This will be easy, or I already know what I'm going to do. But just hearing you talk about this week after week, it just goes to show you can have some concept of where you're going. I know the road and where it's going to headed, but I don't know what the scenery is on the side of the road at each step along the way. And the only way you find that out is walking the path.
Yep.
So, I
Or
mean,
your salutation at the end of every episode I've heard for the last God knows how many years is like, never ring more true. Be nice, be thankful, and do the work. It's like there's a reason why you say that because at the end of the day, it's stay positive, stay grateful, and just you got to get your hands dirty and figure out what's going to work by just doing the work.